This is where I would make some sort of joke by copying a part of the script for the best in-game trades. However, I am above that type of humor. For now. Anyways, this video doesn't need an introduction because it goes without saying. This is a top 10, they are trade evolutions, and I'm going to be ranking them from 10 to 1 as per usual, of course. The only thing that needs to really be said is that, yeah, some of these, especially the ones at the top, are going to be really obvious. So while I will be explaining them regardless, it's for those who live under a rock in Bikini Bottom and might not understand why Super Duper Trade Mon is so high on this list. So let's get right to it. I'm gonna mix it up a bit. I want to do the honorable mentions first. S-Cavalier has an excellent typing, good bulk, good attack, and a solid move pool. Overcoat protects it from powder moves, and it's an excellent Trick Room Pokemon. Machamp has no guard dynamic punch, and that makes me pretty happy. Give Steelix its Mega back, and it would be kind of solid in sand. Maybe. Gorbis is a really solid Swift Swimmer and Shell Smasher, and is a threat if not accounted for. Alright, so go ahead and tell me I'm being biased here. And you know what? You could be right. However, I'm gonna make the argument for Slurpuff right here and now. Sure, it's niche at best. It's arguably not that good. However, the key word is arguably, meaning I get to argue as I said earlier. What is my argument, you may be wondering? Well, first and foremost, the pure fairy typing is surprisingly solid, giving Slurpuff only 2 weaknesses, one of which it can overcome with Drain Punch. Its ability Unburden lets it run a nasty belly drum set with Play Rough, the aforementioned Drain Punch, and then your choice of 4th move. This 4th move can be Wish or Sticky Web usually, along with the Citrus Berry of course, so Unburden will activate. Speaking of Sticky Web, Slurpuff is currently one of the 2 non-bug types in the game to get Sticky Web, the other being Smeargle, who gets everything via Sketch. Except like certain moves now, because Game Freak went and nerfed it. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm overhyping it, but I have slapped Slurpuff on my team comps and played some national decks, and my Magnum Opus team has this thing on it. You would think 5 good Mons and then Slurpuff? Yeah, good for you. But no. Having Sticky Web as the 4th move and then the usual Belly Drum set made for solid roll compression that allowed Slurpuff to either be support or go out the gate offensively. And being able to choose has put me in really good advantage states. It's no auto win, but it automatically won my heart. Just ignore the fact that it has some middling stats. Anyways, feel free to tell me that anything I put in honorable mentions could have taken this spot. I won't die on this hill, but I will fight viciously on it. This is going to be the only tie on this list, and the reason that this is a tie is because these 2 Pokemon essentially do the same thing. One can argue that one is better than the other due to access to Stealth Rock and a special defense boost in Sand. However, you can also argue that the other one is better due to access to Scald and the excellent pure water typing, making it just as defensively capable despite having worse stats. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm referring to Politoed and Gigalith. The reason they are number 9 and not higher is because, admittedly, they're both really only good because they have Drizzle and Sandstream, which kind of carry their viability. And even with these abilities, due to better setters like Pelipper, Hippowdon, and of course Tyranitar, they aren't considered good. Now, if these were the only Sand and Rain setters, they'd probably be excellent, as was the case in Generation 5 where Politoed was meta, defining solely because it got Drizzle, and that's all Rain players needed. Well, that and the Infinite Weather. Now, outside of everything else I mentioned, they do have solid moves in their kits. It's just that, no matter what I say, none of it really enhances them. Their niche is sadly Weather, and Weather alone. Okay, well, Gigalith does have Stealth Rocks, Sturdy, and blowing up with Explosion if it wants, so maybe it is slightly better than Politoed after all. Kind of hard to talk about trade Pokemon without mentioning one of the reasons why the recent slot of Politoed was so good, huh? Kingdra has always been a rather good Pokemon. Due to its excellent typing, only sported what used to be 1, but it is now only 2 weaknesses. Its typing is pretty offensively potent, with Dragon having only 2 types that can switch into it, and Water hitting both of those types. And of course, its ability Swift Swim is what allowed it to shine in earlier VGC formats and in competitive singles. While, unfortunately, it hasn't seen OU usage since early Gen 5 before Drizzle and Swift Swim were banned from being on the same team. That doesn't mean it's a particularly bad Pokemon though. Competition is just really stiff in terms of both Swift Swimmers and Dragon types, sadly. Especially now, with Floatzel's access to Wave Crash, Barraskewda just being good, and both Basculegion forms being arguably some of the best Swift Swimmers. We also have to remember Mega Swampert. And in terms of Dragon-type competition, its base stats sadly didn't hold up in comparison to a lot of the good pseudo-legendaries running around. But despite all these, Kendra's typing, ability, and access to Ice Beam along with its special attack and speed just being good enough to make a solid swimmer absolutely gives it a spot on this list. Now, Milotic has always been a pretty solid Pokemon. While power creep has made it hard for it to keep up over the years, it's still a rather solid choice for any team. Marvel Skill turning the Flame Orb into a useful item, or just running leftovers anyways and switching into a predicted Will-O-Wisp is always a nice quality to have. And its bulk is really impressive for its time. 95 HP, 79 defense, and 125 special defense is a really solid spread, and Marvel Skill can easily mitigate the weakest defensive stat. Typically, walls like this are slow and passive, but Milotic has 81 speed, which is good for a defensive Pokemon, and 100 special attack, which is great for a defensive Pokemon. Now, someone put the image of it in the new Pokemon DLC trailer where it might be using Scald just to scare Gen 9 players into thinking it's coming back. With that out of the way, when it did have Scald, that was definitely its best move. Same with when it had Toxic. Toxic, Scald, Recover, and either Protect or Ice Beam made a very effective move pool in its heyday. Before Scald, Surf was fine for getting in good damage, but Scald definitely made it better. Here's to hoping it has a solid competitive niche when it returns in the DLC. However, due to how strong OU is right now, I don't know if it'll fit in. Feels bad, man. I think it's universally accepted that Porygon 2 is more consistent and is overall better than Porygon Z. Don't get me wrong, Porygon Z has had very fun sets, from Z Conversion the Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, and Life Orb sets. It even gets Nasty Plot. And if you really want to destroy something, Adaptability Hyper Beam doesn't mess around. However, what makes Porygon Z not too good, even if it should be, is due to this unfortunate thing called a base 90 speed stat on a frail Pokemon, which stops it from being fast enough to keep up with a much faster meta, and it's too easy to revenge kill as a result. Porygon 2, however, doesn't have this issue. It has no issues being slow and not really offensively potent because it's not trying to be fast and strong. It's trying to not get hit with knockoff while holding its Eviolite, maybe try to buff its special attack with download to hit slightly harder with Ice Beam off of a base 105 special attack, and then enjoy moves such as Recover, Trick Room, and Teleport. It's a very good support Pokemon that enables the more powerful Trick Room threats, like Conkeldurr for instance. Yeah, remember how I didn't mention it was on Trick Room? I wanted to wait until now to mention it. Never let them know your next move. Porygon 2 doesn't have to be a Trick Room Mon either, although that is arguably its best role. Due to the fact that it isn't in Generation 9, it still technically has Toxic. So you can be a Toxic, Protect, Recover type of guy with Ice Beam as the 4th move slot. However, if you aren't a stall player, Foul Play is also a solid option for an offensive move. It's got good tricks up its sleeve and only has one actual weakness, so it makes for a very good defensive Pokemon. Honestly, I have fallen more and more in love with Conkeldurr, and I'm glad it isn't in Gen 9, so I didn't have to sit there and watch Knockoff get removed from it. I love that Conkeldurr is as strong and bulky as it is, while being able to run whatever item it pleases. You can run leftovers if you want, with Guts or Iron Fist. Guts to try to lure status, or Iron Fist to be consistent. Assault Vest is great to patch up its less than stellar special defense stat. Choice Span with Iron Fist can be interesting if you really need to revenge kill with Mach Punch, and you just didn't really feel like using Breloom that day. Flame Orb is of course the standard, because activating Guts and hitting hard is a strategy as old as the ability itself. With Ursaluna, it's become infinitely better. But this isn't an Ursaluna segment. We will get there one day, I'm sure. For now though, we talk about Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr doesn't just have amazing item variety, 2 really good abilities, Sheer Force and Life Orb if you really want to, I guess, but it also has amazing move pool variety. Drain Punch, Close Combat, Mach Punch, Poison Jab, the Elemental Punches, and Knockoff let you do a lot with its kit. Bulk Up can amp your stats, Rest can let you recover while triggering Guts for a silly Sleep Talk set, and Defog? I guess it gets Defog. So not only does it resist Stealth Rock, benefit from Toxic Spikes, and shrugs off Sticky Web, but it can also remove them. It's a very strange Swiss Army knife of a Pokemon, and while there are clearly more optimized builds, that doesn't stop Conkeldurr from being a Pokemon that can just do anything it wants with the right mindset. It's definitely a personal favorite of mine. So, admittedly, this Pokemon wasn't gonna be this high up. But then Generation 9 happened to it, and it suddenly became very, very good. Slowking. Access to Terastallization is great, but that isn't the selling point. The selling point is that Chilling Reception is an amazing move. Setting up Hail while pivoting out and not being weak to fire like the rest of the ice types who want to abuse their Slush Rush gives Hail at least some defensive backbone. Regenerator really helps this case, thanks to the HP it receives on switch out. Not to mention, thanks to its ability to use Trick Room, it gets to do one of my favorite things I've seen done in competitive Pokemon. Trick Room lets Slowking go first, and unlike Teleport, Chilly Reception doesn't have negative priority. This means that Slowking can go first and use Chilly Reception to quickly pivot into your Trick Room sweeper. Probably Ursaluna, because it becomes the Trick Room Pokemon. If this were all it could do, it wouldn't be good enough. But Future Sight for positioning, Flamethrower and Ice Beam for coverage options, Chilling Water to just be rude, and Thunder Wave to cripple your opponent gives Slowking a lot of options. And you really never know what it's gonna do next, unless you see it on Hail or Trick Room teams. In that case, you know exactly what it's gonna do next. But can you stop it? That's the real question. The top 3 is incredibly close, and I mean it's like inches away from each other. And these could theoretically all be switched, and I'd still deem it to be a rather accurate list. These 3 Pokemon are all just that good. When deciding who went where, which was an arduous and painful decision. I had to ask myself whether or not I wanted to use them at their average and most consistent throughout the generations, or if I want to use them at their peak in terms of power. I wound up deciding that I wanted to use them at their peak performance in official formats. If this were more who has been better on average, it would still be close. But the Pokemon I placed here would be a strong contender for number 1. So, Alakazam, right? Excellent special attack and speed, clocking in at 135 and 125 respectively. The pure psychic typing is solid overall, and Magic Guard protecting it from non-attack damage makes it one of the best Life Orb users in the game because launching even more powerful attacks doesn't take any health from it. Energy Ball, Dazzling Gleam, Focus Blast, Shadow Ball, and then of course your Stab Psychic definitely makes it a force to be reckoned with. And if it ever sets up Nasty Plot on you, it's practically game over. Definitely don't let it around Tapu Lele or Indeedee Psychic Terrain. Otherwise, Life Orb boosted Expanded Force would be truly nightmarish. As a Mega Evolution, Alakazam became even more speedy and more powerful, but more physically frail. It was a terrifyingly powerful win mode button, so long as you had adequate ways to keep it from being in the distance of a revenge killing priority move. Trace is also a hilarious ability that can be useful in the most incredibly specific and niche situations. so I do respect it as a choice. There has never been a single game where Alakazam has been bad, and I respect that. Scizor has to be one of my favorite Pokemon ever made, and also my favorite way to beat Alolan Ninetales, as I mentioned once before. Its design has always been incredibly sick, and its pincers happening to look like Trapinch's head is pretty funny too. I think we all know why Scizor is good though, right? A myriad of resists, only one weakness, Technician boosted Bullet Punch, and U-turn for pivoting. Swords Dance, Close Combat, Defog, and what were once Roost and Knockoff made it absolutely excellent. While it has sadly fallen out of OU in recent generations, and it's somehow losing Roost has to be one of the single worst decisions I have ever seen made in anything. Ever. Scizor still has maintained excellent qualities though. Terra Steel is excellent for Bullet Punch, and Terra Water can work as a way to catch the fire types trying to get the jump on you off guard. Not to mention, at the end of the day, it's still Scizor. Even nerfed, just giving leftovers in Swords Dance or a choice band in 4 attacking moves will still get the job done. Also, Mega Scizor was insane back in the day, and sometimes I look back on it wishing we could see the return of the peak mechanic. Speaking of the peak mechanic, yeah, Gengar is number 1 on the trades again. Admittedly, this is because when comparing to Alakazam, I wanted to focus on how strong they were at their peaks, and Mega Gengar got outright banned because Shadow Tag is too good, something Mega Alakazam hasn't accomplished in an official format. Mega Gengar is also bulky enough to take a hit before going down, and odds are you're probably bringing it in the trap and knock something out, and then leave when they switch into a good Gengar matchup, and then bring it back in against another bad one. What are they gonna do? Switch? Exactly. Mega Gengar was simply just that oppressive. Now, regular Gengar, while not Alakazam, definitely is still a very good Pokemon. But because it was number 1 on another list, I think I will save you some time and just say good coverage, very fast, good special attack, yeah, it's Gengar. Because I wouldn't be saying anything new by talking about how it can get Energy Ball or something. What I can tell you that's new though, is that you can finally make it immune to ground type again by using Terra Flying, and then you can use Terra Blast to, actually, yeah. Gengar's coverage already hits what Flying does. I guess just use Terra Blast for the novelty of it. And that's all I got for today. What'd you guys think of this list? Would you argue the placements of the top 3? Let me know your thoughts down below. With that, I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna go play National Dex Ubers so I can use Mega Alakazam on Tapu Lele's Psychic Terrain and see how long I can use Expanding Force for. Peace!